So today I'm with Shiv Ramji, who is the president of Auth0 at Okta. I'm super excited to talk to you about all things security, especially with respect to AI agents.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me.
So, Shiv, I have a lot of questions for you. I would say, first things I want to talk to you about is you have seen the shift of different products that have built in the software ecosystem over these years, whether it was like the traditional software products which you have to download on your laptop, to SaaS, which came on cloud. And now we're seeing a lot of the traditional software is moving away and everything supposedly becoming AI agents, right? That's what it seems like from the outside. But when you're working with enterprises, what would you say is that shift that you're seeing? Is it somewhere like a layer integration where people are like, oh, we're going to continue using 80% of the traditional software, but just have like a platform integration or just a layer integration? Or are you seeing these softwares being built fundamentally different ground up?
Well, right now it's probably a mix, which is, companies do have to support the current, and it's kind of funny I'm saying traditional as if it's like, so old, but the current way of building stuff, which is, it's pre-recorded software, which is like, I know what so let's just take an example. We've all accessed financial reports internally, right? So I run my business a certain way, and so finance has created certain reports. I'll log in, and let's say I look at 7 different reports, which is kind of how I run my business. But those 7 reports were kind of thought through, right? Like we had requirements, somebody wrote the requirements, and we built the software, and then we shipped the software, and there's a login box that says when Shiv logs in, he has access to 7 reports, right? So it's pre-recorded software is the easiest way to think about it. Now, that's not going away. We're all going to be accessing those reports to run our business, or you'll access internal knowledge bases, or whatever you've built internally, you're probably going to do that. Then we're entering this era of agents. And you will see kind of a mix there too, which is in some cases, agents will work on my behalf and may access the same reports. So that's kind of one pattern. Another pattern is, well, these agents will work autonomously on their own, and they'll work with other agents too in other systems. And in the second scenario, this is where I see companies completely re-architecting these products that they're building, or these agents they're building from the ground up to take advantage of this new paradigm. And so I think you will see a mix. Obviously, we have to support the traditional apps, and we have to support the new wave of apps or agents that are very, very different, right? Which is kind of the easiest way to think about it is like intelligence on demand.
Yeah.
So it's not pre-recorded software, it's actually software on demand, right? So the agents will literally generate reporting, actually will even decide what type of output you need to make a certain decision, right? So instead of saying there's a bar chart in these 7 reports because I look at data a certain way, agents will literally dynamically generate whatever output is needed for me to make the decision, or whatever output is needed to kind of answer the question that I'd asked. So we're entering this era of kind of on-demand software, and it's a pretty dramatic change. And I think we'll have kind of both of these scenarios. But over time, I think the agentic pattern, which is kind of on-demand software, will probably be the predominant way how we interact with systems.
I'm seeing this difference in opinions or difference in priorities between 2 different practitioners. So whenever I'm speaking with people who have been in the enterprise world for like quite some time, they are coming in with a perspective where they're like, oh, we want to bring in AI capabilities into whatever we have been building in so far, right? Like it's more like an add-on to problems that they've already been solving. And one of the challenges that I see when I'm speaking with them is, recently I was having a conversation with somebody in fintech, and they wanted to they've learned about RAG from somewhere, and they were just like having a conversation about RAG. And they were talking about the design patterns, and I casually mentioned like, hey, how do you have your role-based access management in this design pattern? They were like, sorry, what does that mean? So I had to explain them like why this could be a challenge when you're like building RAG, and like if you're not letting the agent decide who has access to what, that can be a security issue. While on the other side, I would say there's another group of people who are coming in from very hype, excited phase where they want to just apply AI to everything. They're like thinking about, hey, we want to use AI, we'll figure out what problem later. And that's where, like, a lot of rapper companies, you can talk about that, where they're like, oh, they have like seen some small problem and they're like, hey, let's just try to use all sophisticated AI tools to like fix this problem. In both the scenarios, I say the fundamental gap is security, authentication, privacy. All of these are afterthought. They're like, oh, we'll think about it once we have like 1 million users. So what would you recommend, like, in those kind of scenarios? Like, where do you see that trend going? Where do you see that issues started trickling in when security, authentication, like identity management, privacy, these are not something that you build from day one?
Yeah, I think well, you're already starting to see the trouble with like ignoring security, right? So it's just this is looking at the last year, and I'll share a few examples. Like these are publicly known. So like last year in the summer, McDonald's had an issue with their agent where applicant information was leaked, right? So again, basic security stuff, they didn't do it, had a big impact in terms of consumer or applicant information that was leaked. And just as recently as like 1 or 2 weeks ago, there was a researcher, I believe, from Meta who was working with an agent, and the agent went and deleted stuff that it wasn't supposed to. But these are all examples of if security is an afterthought or if security is left behind, you are going to have these issues. Now, you mentioned a few things in your examples. One was like, you asked about role-based access control, and I don't know who it was, but they weren't aware. And I think that's a very common scenario. Like, let's take the internal application use case today. Everybody sees the power of AI and agents, and so they want to realize that, right? Think about having intelligence on demand. Who doesn't want to use that? But internal users aren't thinking about data exfiltration, model poisoning, sensitive data access, over-provisioned agents, least privilege access, service accounts, or they are not thinking about those things. And it's kind of unfair to even imagine that if I'm working at a company, now I have to think about all of these things, right? I just want to use the agent to get benefit. So we really are trying to help, CIOs or CTOs or CMOs or CDOs, to essentially give them foundational technologies so they can handle those tough issues around data access and control, fine-grained permissions, and identity, right? So that employees don't have to worry about these things. So we want to build these products to give to the C-level so that they can define what the agents can connect to securely. They can define what the agents can do on behalf of us, or what the agents can do autonomously on their own, right? And so in part, it's kind of a little bit of educating the industry. The other part is like, having the right tools and technologies, which we're working on with our customers and deploying them now actively. And really, we want to make sure that our customers are implementing foundational identity capabilities, because our view is that kind of identity security is AI security. If you don't get this part right, you're not going to get the benefits of AI. And as you know, mistakes in this space can be very, very costly, right? If an agent, like, just take an internal access example. Imagine if an agent that's doing something on my behalf now has access to sensitive information. Imagine if we're in the same company, it has access to your salary information, right? And it does something with it or discloses that information in some scenario, that would be catastrophic, right? So we really want to make sure that these agents are acting with the right sort of permissions and access control, so that they don't do anything that can accidentally cost the company from a breach perspective, or from a risk perspective. And so that's kind of, so it's both it's kind of educating everybody and then also giving them the right products and technologies to realize the gains.
Some of the examples that you mentioned, right, like, makes me curious about this. With traditional software, I feel because of the determinism, because of knowing that, hey, this is the boundaries of what the software could do, what the users can do with the software. To some extent, software engineering and security engineering could be decoupled. Most of the companies had back-end engineers, front-end engineers who were doing different stuff, who were like building, versus security engineers who were focusing more on prevention and like diagnosis. With AI coming into the mix, I feel like the whole non-determinism that comes in, and it's just like the mix of AI being able to call APIs with like the mix of auth come into the picture, with like the data access from like a RAG perspective. I'm just feeling that maybe these roles being decoupled is not the right way to think about it, or maybe there should be like some level of overlap.
It's too early to predict how what roles will change and in what way. I mean, we're already seeing that software development in itself has collapsed, like the stages that you would go through have collapsed significantly. And that, small teams are able to do a lot more. So we do have early evidence that this is playing out. But whether security engineering will continue to be a distinct role or not, harder to see. But I think the security engineering practices are important nonetheless, right? So, and today teams are able to do this. I mean, it's a very familiar concept, in AI software development is, everybody's kind of building skills or adding skills. So you could build security skills into your development process, which is kind of the common practice right now. So it is true that you can actually embed a lot of good security best practices from day one. Now, but even that requires you to have knowledge of what's important from a security standpoint. And again, a lot of people who are very quick to just start building applications or vibe coding their apps, they're not thinking about all of the security problems, right? So I think there's several ways to solve it. Skills is certainly one way to do it, and I think that will help people build secure software from the get-go. And then as far as rules, I think they're all going to evolve and change. It's not particularly clear which rules will go away. I mean, there's a lot of hype and, everybody claiming on X and on social media with their hot takes. But I think we're at the phase where everybody is kind of, wow, this is powerful. I can really build an application very quickly. So that is true. But whether agents can actually maintain this software over a long period of time, TBD. And part of it is capabilities are changing super fast. So, models and agents will get better, and they are getting better at a very rapid pace. So this might be a solved problem, but we just haven't seen applications that were built with these vibe-coded tools or one-shotted applications. We don't know the longevity of these applications and how they're maintained. So it's a little bit early to say how these rules will change, but the importance of building secure software, the importance of having applications that are secure by design, actually are even more important, because you want to make sure, if you're going to generate so much software and so much on demand, you better be secure.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of how I think about it, which is like our role just got even more important in this ecosystem, because we now really need to make sure that when you're building an agent or an application, that it's built with security in mind, and it can't be an afterthought. And you can see the impact when it's an afterthought. You see even more issues with credential leakage and data, customer information being leaked out. You will see more and more of those. And so again, this is where we want to invest in building these capabilities so that our customers aren't building applications that are not secure. They need to be secure from day one.
Shiv, where would you say the bridge between like build versus buy comes in picture, right? Like if I'm a tech company and I have the capability to like invest in a huge org, which is just focused on security, that's probably very less number of people out there in the world. So if I'm a company and I want to like heavily invest in AI agents, but it's not something that I want to like hire for particularly and like build it ground up. Where does like Auth0 come in? Like, how does Okta help?
Yeah, I think if you're a company, you should really focus on your core differentiation, right? Solving identity and security challenges that are solved by others in the industry is probably not a good use of your engineering time. And so it's fairly common when companies are building applications and now agents, they look to Auth0 because this is kind of our expertise. We go deep on all things related to identity security. We're thinking about standards. We're thinking about different languages to support different frameworks. We're thinking about protocols. These are things that, if you're a company, you shouldn't be worrying about. So in all of these cases, it's always better to just buy versus building, and then use your engineering teams and resources on true differentiators for your business, right? So if you're in the business of building a CRM, or if you're in a business of doing logistics, like focus on those problems as opposed to building identity. Identity is kind of like a foundational building block, and both Auth0 and Okta, like we have 6,000 people who wake up every morning thinking about this problem so that you don't have to. So we take on the burden of making sure that you have products and capabilities that allow you to build applications or agents that are secure by design. And then if you're using these agents in your company, and if you're using Okta as your identity provider, we also make sure that these agents don't do anything that they're not supposed to do, right? So both Auth0 helps you build agents securely, and then Okta helps you manage these agents in your enterprise environment.
I have an interesting question for you because most of the companies are building software and security is something that's an add-on. Okta is building it in the other way. Like for Okta, like security auth is like one of the core differentiators. So what would you say like is 3 design pattern recommendations, or like, 3 tips around like design patterns, which other people might not be doing it the way Okta is doing?
Yeah, I think internally, the way we build products, I think we want to be the world's most secure company. So for us, the principles of like least privilege is so important, right? So and this applies to both humans and agents. So it doesn't matter whether you are an employee or if you're using an agent. In both cases, we want to make sure that least privilege access patterns are always honored. The second thing is we are internally making sure that we are deploying finer grained permissions. So down to like a database record or a file or an entry into a knowledge management system, right? So we really want to make sure that we have fine grained authorization and permissions and access control. And then the last bit is internally, we are building just like anyone else. We're building systems and agents, and so we also are building capabilities and visibility across all of these agents. So everything that we're doing for customers, we're doing ourselves internally, because we also need these same capabilities. And in some ways, we are our biggest customer from a use case perspective. We're a large company, and have lots of sophisticated needs. And so if we can solve this for ourselves, obviously, our technology is going to be relevant for other customers too. So those are the 3 kind of patterns that we implement internally.